Hi there, my name is Louis Taylor. I'm a composer based in Bristol, and this is the second instalment of my How to Write for Orchestra series. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down an excerpt from my latest composition, which is my symphony. It's not actually a complete symphony yet, it's not finished yet, it's in the works still, but I'd like to take you through some of the first movement, and how I've orchestrated it, and how I've developed the theme, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown in my notation software, which is Dorico. So in a moment, I'll share with you the beginning of the first movement, but without further ado, this is How to Write for Orchestra, Part 2. So to start with, I'd like to show you guys the beginning of my symphony. So I'm just going to play for you a little clip which presents to you the first subject, and a little bit after that, just to get the vibe of the composition, and so you can really hear the actual shape and structure of the melody, and that will help you understand how I've developed it later on in the piece. So here it is. Right, so I enjoyed that. So basically, as you can see here, the melody consists of this long held note with two crotchets, moving on to some longer notes, and then in the second phrase you've got a slightly slightly heightened emotion and feeling here with these slightly quicker quaver movements, and then afterwards you have a variation on that theme, which is part of the same melody, part of the same theme, the first subject. And sort of a prefatory climax. That's how I see this a little bit here, where yes, it does get quite loud, and it is using pretty much the entire orchestra, but I didn't want to make the drama feel like it was coming too early. I wanted to pace it a little bit, but just a bit of a taster of what's to come, and to sort of add some heightened emotion at the beginning of the movement. So as you can see, this is the first theme and the first subject. And what I mean by subject is the term subject comes from the traditional sonata form movements, back from the 1700s, 1800s, and so on. And basically, the sonata form consists of three sections: the exposition section, the development section, and the recapitulation. And basically it's all about setting up in the exposition two subjects generally, with a little bridge in between them, and they're contrasting themes usually, in different keys. Quite often, especially in classical era music and romantic era, it's the second subject is in the relative major key or the dominant key to the first subject, and then the rest of the piece is all about developing these themes and changing them, morphing them gradually, and until you reach a climax. And then there's a literal recap of the first exposition, basically. Sometimes it's a little bit changed, but usually it's a literal recap, literal reprise, which isn't actually as desirable these days. So I try to avoid the literal recapitulation unless I really feel like the music needs that restatement of the theme. But basically, I want to show you guys how I've orchestrated a particular section, because and I can show you how I've orchestrated the first section too, because it all comes down to the rules that I was talking about in part 1, which if you haven't seen, you should check that out. So I'll link that down in the description below, and up there in the little I button, in the top right corner. So basically, I'll show you from the beginning. So now I think it's rule number 4 is to be sparing with your instruments. And basically, as you can see here, right at the beginning, I'm literally using 3 very subtle instruments. So if we zoom in a little bit, I've got Pitt's bass, so not full bass even, just Pitt's, very light. I've muted the cellos and the basses too, so they're even quieter and more dulled. And like I say, I've got cellos here, playing a sort of broken chord figure, or arpeggio, how you want to look at it. And it's on a sort of G minor, half diminished sort of chord. G minor add minor 6. Don't know why it's playing it like that. And then moving on to F major 9. And that's a sort of repeated progression. I wanted to continue in that progression for quite some time. I wanted to sort of make the music feel slightly hypnotic and like thoughts just going round and round in your head almost. And here we have a very light harp. This is just copying the bass line essentially, just for a little bit of added flavour. And here we have these nice harmonics in the harp here that give quite a subtle pad-like texture, just to add to the texture of the cellos and the harmony. And then after that we have these slightly more building up now. We've got the Celeste coming in with the flute and, well, a flute and a clarinet. And they're just playing and the violas, which are also consorted. All the strings in this particular section are all consored. They're all muted. And basically I just wanted it to feel like it was picking up a bit, leading nicely into the melody, which we have here. So after this point, I wanted to introduce some brass here, slowly building up the texture more and more. I'm doubling the melody in the flutes, by the way, as well, which makes it feel slightly brighter, which is a quite nice contrast to the rest of the texture, I would say. I'm building up the texture, slightly increasing the dynamics here, and then finally we reach this massive chord here, this massive B minor chord, which is really kind of out of nowhere. I mean, it's supposed to be unexpected and loud and sort of sudden and quite shocking in some ways, although you might expect it. It depends on the individual listener. But yeah, so that's kind of how I've done it. And I've got all of the brass here, all of the woodwinds essentially, and all the strings playing quite, forte, with quite a lot of percussion going on, but not too much percussion, just to sort of give it some extra punch and flavour in this section. And then afterwards it quietens down quite quickly, and it doesn't really ever get anywhere near that loud until much later in the piece, where the real climax is, which is here, which is the section I'll be moving on to now. So basically I have taken the theme in this section. We're well into the development area, the development region now, and I've taken this section here and I have used some extended harmony techniques which I learnt from JJ Bethune, whose channel you should check out if you haven't already. And this is called reverse extension harmonization, and basically the idea is that you have your melody and you come up with a specific chord that you want to use as a sort of mood that you want to invoke or evoke, and you almost repeat that chord in parallel, but you can revoice it so that it's not actually in parallel. So in this one I chose a minor 6 chords because I just thought that it was similar to the opening chord, and also I wanted that sort of, I'm not really sure if I like this. It's almost sad, quite mysterious. What's going on here? I wanted the ambiguity to rise into the next bit. But I haven't actually used reverse extension harmonization in this particular passage. I actually only bring that in just afterwards, here in these strings. So basically, we have a more lush traditional harmony here, lots of extensions, quite basic harmony that just leads nicely onto them, using my ear here intuitively to work out where the chords want to go, because I want that to contrast the next section where the chords really don't feel like they want to go at all. So we've got some really weird harmony here. I'll just play this bit for you. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'll play this bit for you first. So that's that bit basically, and as you can see here, long held note followed by 2 crotchets, kind of. It's just extended a little bit, augmented and developed, and you have these little counter lines here. And that's another thing that I would say partly I learnt from J.J. Bethune, but also generally speaking all the classical composers, if you just study their works, and that is part writing. Now, this is a really important aspect of orchestral writing, part writing. So, to clarify, part writing is essentially the craft of composing different harmonious yet contrasting lines of music which fit together nicely to make a neat and well-constructed section of music. In his book, 21st Century Part Writing, the composer and educator J.J. Bethune depicts part writing on a spectrum between static chordal harmony and counterpoint. Static harmony prioritizes vertical axis, and counterpoint prioritizes the horizontal axis. As I say, part writing is a balance between the two, and so wants to keep the music moving and arrange the section so that there are multiple contrasting melodic and horizontal lines working together, whilst also equally prioritizing how they sound when played vertically together as a chord. So basically, I really wanted to make use of this great part writing idea here, which is simply, I'm not using any more than 4 parts here, and it's very tight and clean, and I'm making use of counterpoint here, but also it's a blend between the counterpoint and the harmony, like I say part writing should be, or more accurately, like J.J. Bethune said part writing should be. And you have, part of what makes it is looking for ways of sort of ornamenting the basic chordal progressions. So I have this very basic, I could have just held this note along here, like this. But instead, in fact, why don't I just show you what I've done. Let's see. So maybe I would have kept that. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then I probably would have just kept that like that. Whoops. So very basic now. We're not getting much movement at all. As you can see, I've got rid of a lot of the movement. So if we just listen to this, you'll hear this is more block chord harmony end of the axis. So that's quite sort of basic. It doesn't really move around that much. Still can be very beautiful sounding and lush, but I wanted a little bit more motion than that and interest to the lines that are happening. And also, I think it makes it more idiomatic for the string players because they're all playing their own little melodies. So I'll just play you what it really sounds like again with these added ornamentations. I've added some neighbour tones, some passing notes, and this little figuration here. It's imitative qualities that add this nice sort of back and forth conversationalist sort of feeling to it. So let's just play this for one more time. So that's much better in my opinion. And I'm really happy with that, how that turned out. The only line that I haven't actually changed is this viola line. and it's quite boring, to be honest. But I didn't want too much movement on this chord. We've already got some nice movement here and here, so I didn't really feel the need to make it any more any more forward moving for lack of a better term. So I just don't really think that it needs it. I think it holds it all together quite nicely. If you have too much movement, then you're turning into a much more counterpoint based structure. And like I say, I'm trying to balance counterpoint and harmony. So anyway, moving on here, I then change the harmony up a lot and have this little contrasting in between. And moving on to this bit now. Oh, the harmony's much darker now. And then I contrast these strings. I could have repeated it, but I wanted to contrast it because it adds more interest. And not only did I change the instruments, but I changed the articulation as well. Instead of much more legato, melodic, I've got clipped staccato. Bum, ba, 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 bum. So let's hear this. Same harmony, basically. And then I join the two together as a united force, moving on to this huge climax here, adding the brass percussion as an extra touch. Full tutti section here. Better not play the rest just yet. So, basically, this all follows the rules that I set out in my previous video. Part writing, good part writing. Learn how to write parts. Keep it down to about 4. If unless you really need more. Of course, there's so many pieces of music which have maybe even 20 parts. But the point is that is the intended effect. I wanted a nice, melodic, harmonious piece of music here, and I felt like it needed some tightness. And I didn't want it to be too chaotic. I wanted it to be quite well structured, so that you could clearly hear how I've developed the theme. So I've made use of good part writing. Then I'm trying to be sparing of my instruments until the climax here. Like, I could have used the whole orchestra on this section here, and it would have sounded really good in this section. I could have copied this into the flutes. I can show you how it sounds, and I can just blend the parts. And that's another thing, you've got to learn how to blend the parts. But I would, like I say, be sparing with your instruments until the climax, and then you can really blend your parts. So, I can just quickly show you what I mean. It would have sounded too sudden if I just... Let's see here. This is very, very quick orchestration. I'm just trying to be quick here. I haven't even thought about where each thing wants to go. I might double that in the bass clarinet too. In fact, I might even give this line to the cor anglais too, to give it some extra punch. I could basically outline the harmony and the brass. Maybe perhaps in the horns. In fact, you know what? Let's put it in the trombones. So if we go here, reduce that into these two parts. Make that treble clef just for easy reading. Put that into the same voice for now. Up stem. We could do this. Reduce. Same thing here. Reduce that. Might put this down an octave actually. It's quite high for trombones. Another thing, learn your instrument ranges. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to know how to do that. Where to put each thing. If I just give this one. Ooh. See what, I'm gonna get rid of that. Give this line. Just follow that across like that. Maybe I will give this one a long E. Yeah. Okay, going along like that. I'm just going to extend that as well. So, as you can hear here, this is what it would have sounded. This is probably going to sound very rough. So it's very nice. I'm really happy with how that sounds actually, and I'm quite surprised because, you know, I'm almost thinking, oh, that's actually nicer than I was expecting. Shall I keep it? But no, I need to restrain myself here. I'm going to delete it because although as much goodness that is, and it makes me feel good, and it sounds good to me, I still want to be sparing with this because I really think that it will make the effect of the climax so much more impactful and aggressive and sudden, and that's exactly what I want. I really need this bit to be very shocking and really out of nowhere, and that's kind of why the harmony changes, starts to get darker. It's like, oh, that was unexpected. Oh, it's getting more jarring now. Oh, hold on, it's really building somewhere. What's happening? And then bam, and it's quite a quick passage. It really does happen over, you know, less than a minute, less than 30 seconds maybe. You know, I then use the brass to notice how they're not muted anymore as well, so it's even more impactful. Now, after this massive climax here, I then extend the climax. I change it so that the bass is gone, which is a very sudden shift as well, which is the intended effect. And I make the strings start to play in tremolo, which means that they're bowing very fast on one held note. You might notate it as you know, demi, hemi, semi-quavers or whatever, and just have like loads and loads of like that, but it's meant to be as quick as you can sort of effect, and it's meant to be like very sudden, almost shivering, and then you have this really, really high shrill brass trumpet coming in as loud as possible, as expressively as possible, on a development of the main theme, and I have the high winds doubling. And I'm thinking about maybe using some flutter tongue there, but I haven't decided yet because I quite like how it's just still. And it's just the high instruments essentially here, really just pushing through. The bass has failed now, and it's just the high orchestra. And that in itself makes the next section, where the bass finally drops, if you will, even more impactful. And I won't go into too much detail on this next section, but that's the general premise. So I will play you this section here, and maybe a little bit prior to it, so you have a bit of context. And I hope that you guys have learnt lots from this video, because I think that it will help you see how the rules that I set out in my last video can be applied into real music, like I've done here. So without further ado, this is the rest of my symphony. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that and you found it useful, and I hope you guys learned something. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. So yeah, please do check out my prior video though if you haven't seen it already. It'll probably help you understand this much better. And let me know if you like this sort of style where I do a video essay on the subject that details out some information about it, and then I give you a bit more of a live demo to show you how it's really applicable. Yeah, so please subscribe, leave a like, turn the bell on, the notifications. It really helps me out if you guys see the videos, and leave a comment if you liked it. Or not, please do give some feedback, that'd be great. So yeah, thanks so much. Bye for now.